I think when we look at the scale of some of these disasters we see on the television, whether it's a typhoon or a storm or indeed an earthquake, the emergency services get overwhelmed very, very quickly. Sure. So they will be focused on the truly big things happening, like a big building collapsing or something like that. And so most of us will be left on our own for a considerable period of time.
Hi, welcome to Peak Moment. I'm Janaea Donaldson. I'm in Vancouver in Canada with a couple who are very prepared for the next emergency. May it not happen, but they're ready. I'm with Ann Pacey and Tim Beale. Thank you for having me in your home. You folks have got your household prepared in a way that I think a lot of other people would like to be. And I realize that in your situation you're thinking earthquake, storm. Tell me what else. You know,
mostly earthquake is the big risk here.
But other people will be thinking about hurricanes,
yes,
fires, right?
Yeah.
Even tornadoes.
Right. Yes.
You know, the lights going out. I mean, the power being down for a long time.
Flooding.
Floods. Yes. Right. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So, to help people, this could be thinking of being prepared is both can be frightening. Mm-hmm. It also is very wise. It also is very daunting. It's like, where in the heck do we start? And so I want to ask, if you can help people break down, where do they start thinking and then start to think about the physical stuff? So I'm going to say, Ann, what are the things that people need to be, what areas do they need to be thinking about?
Okay. Well, there are lots of fantastic guides out there, lots of online information, there are lots of books available. But the areas that you want to think about can pretty much be broken down into your financial, which a lot of people don't think about, so
your records.
Financial. Shelter, water, sanitation, food, medical, communications. I don't think I've missed anything. I think those are pretty much the main categories.
Warmth, which is part of the shelter and your clothes as well.
Light, cooking capacities, things like that kind of all go together underneath that shelter. And,
and your community, friends and family and neighbors.
And that's a good point. It's your family, your plan for how do you get back in touch with each other, and that's probably the one that really concerns people the most. If we're in different spots when something happens, then how do we make sure we can get in touch with our loved ones and get back together again as quickly and as safely as possible? So that's a really important step.
So if the kids are at school or you're at work, it's like, how do you find each other?
That's right.
A plan
so having
for that.
a number of spots that you go to and it's an agreed to. You have a number 1 spot, a number 2 spot, and a number 3 spot. And then a contact outside that you can all communicate with, so
you can relay messages to that person. To grandma will always know where somebody is.
An out-of-town contact can be very important because communications often go down in a big earthquake, for example. But strangely, you can often call out of the area much easier than you can call within the area.
Because it's the things are broken locally.
So
they're overwhelmed.
An out-of-town contact, it could be a family member or a friend in another city or location. If everybody has that number and that person is aware that they're the out-of-town contact, then maybe everybody can contact them, tell them their situation, and that information can get disseminated back to the individuals in the family.
And we've certainly had that happen before. We were in an earthquake in Peru where we weren't able to communicate with each other except in bits.
For about 36 hours.
Yeah, it was quite complicated.
So you know this firsthand, don't you?
Exactly.
Okay, jumping to number 1, financial, legal, that kind of stuff. What does one need to have prepared?
Right. So, Bob, Tim, do you want to bring that box up? Maybe we can just.
What kinds of documents or records do you think people should have? And this is to take with you, right?
Well, it's a box where everything's in one place. And we've got files, our tax records, any critical legal documents, etc. in here. If you own property, you might want to have a
copy of the deed,
and things like that. We've got residence permits here, so we've got all the documentation related to that. We've got our birth certificates, all that kind of information, our marriage certificate, any other key legal or financial documents.
Your wills?
Yes.
Wills be another one.
Yeah. Precious family photos?
Yes.
Maybe, yeah.
I mean,
anything like that.
Anything you don't want to lose.
Anything you really don't want to lose.
I see.
And indeed, it's better if you copy this information and have it stored at some other site. It could be in a bank vault, it could be with a family friend or something like that.
And so what you have is copies of things here.
Well, these are the originals.
These are the originals in our case.
We have copies elsewhere.
You have copies elsewhere.
That's right.
I see.
We have copies elsewhere.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that way you can recreate your financial and legal life after a disaster.
Great. All right. There's number one.
Number one, that's right.
Number two, let's go to water. Well, I've got Tim over here. We've got, I'm sure that, you know, one of the things you hear about is the water mains get broken, the sewage gets mixed with it, the mud gets mixed with it, whatever. And so it's like drinking, we can't last very long without that. What do you do for water storage and whatever, filtration?
I think it's always good to have at least some bottled water stored as part of your emergency kit. That will provide you with immediate relief. But it's also very good to have a filter. Most filters today, they can filter 99.9% of all bacteriological things, and also heavy metals and other things like that. So really you can put puddle water in a filter like this, just put it in the top of there, and it's got a filter column inside, and the water will dribble through into the bottom half and be perfectly drinkable. And there's lots of different types of filters you can buy on the market. We also have, as part of our emergency kit, a small camping pump filter. It's fairly small volume. I think it processes about a litre a minute or something like that. But still, in an emergency situation, you can provide yourself with clean drinking water from practically any water lying around.
And this, which was in one of your storage boxes, which we'll get to in a second, that's a place you can store that water after you've filtered it if you just need to keep volume going, if you've got a larger family or other people that need to get water. I love these. These are so clever because they just come down to nothing, you know, so that they store easily.
And we have another larger solid case on wheels, so, because water is quite heavy. So if you do have another water source that's set up afterwards where you need to move back and forth from the water source to your home or your shelter area, it's nice to have something that helps you, and especially if you're older or you're injured.
With little wheels. So it's what, 3 or 5 gallons or something, you know, like that.
25 gallons, I think. It's a larger volume.
So, and this is maybe if you're in place, because you may or may not carry something that size with you.
So this is something we keep in the house, but the smaller filter we have is part of our emergency kit, which we can take outside. Which
I want to chat with you about. Okay, so moving along, we got our water, at least a start on our water. One of the things that you said, Tim, is that a starting point that many people can think about is in terms of camping gear. And so talk about that as maybe a core hub for people to think about what they have for their camping situation, or if they do camp, is the starting place for their emergency gear. So tell us about what you store your stuff in, and kind of what's in that storage that you would take with you.
Well, here in Vancouver, there's a lot of outdoor type people, and a lot of people here go camping. So a lot of people have got the start of an emergency kit, basically, as part of their camping kit. And that's what we've based our emergency gear around. So we go camping on occasions in the summer, and we have tents and sleeping bags and cooking stuff and other items. And we've supplemented that with some additional things which perhaps we don't strictly need for camping. But we might need in an emergency situation. But certainly your camping kit can form a good basis for an emergency kit.
So what goes into that? I mean, let's just think about, just brainstorm here. You've got a tent.
Right, so shelter.
All right, okay. Some kind of camping
That's right.
tent.
You've got bedding.
sleeping bags or something,
bags,
right?
bedding.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
You've usually got cooking kits so you can prepare food, and mess kits so that you can eat the food.
Eat the food, right.
Those are standard lamps, so you can have.
Which I know we have some of,
Right.
and
We'll
some
show some of that.
cooking
We have
stove
Right. Right.
kind of heating.
Right.
We have a
Gas stove.
standard camping cooking stove, and we've got quite a good supply of the gas bottles that go with it. So
Right.
the compressed
That's
gas,
right.
little bottles.
That's a little bit excess. We're not counting on the fact that we can go down to the Canadian Tire. We're actually prepared
yes, we've got
to cook for quite a few weeks afterwards.
for a few weeks.
Or
Oh,
for a
that's
few weeks,
that's
yeah.
brilliant.
well,
Yes.
I would say a few weeks is probably pushing it a little bit, but certainly
somewhere
a
on
couple
that
of weeks
order,
probably.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But certainly we've got quite a few of the little gas bottles that are very standard here. So that's a good start. Lighting is important. You know, at night you want to be able to see things.
Sure.
We have battery torches, but we all know that battery torches can run out. So
For those of you who are American or in other countries, a torch is a flashlight. Go ahead.
right. Sorry for that.
That's fine.
So we've got some wind-ups. So
Wind
instead
up?
of having, you can
Oh.
actually wind them. They've come out now that, and I think they're really fairly common now. So,
So
that you can actually crank them up, and you don't have to count on having a disposable battery. You can recharge them.
Okay, those will last a long time.
Those
I mean,
will last
even
a-
if you have
and
to
it
You
gets
just
you
keep-
exercise too.
Yeah, you just have to keep winding them up. We also have a very powerful gas light, which uses
Right.
the same gas cylinders as the
Actually, yeah.
cooker.
Right. Actually, do you
So-
want to
Yeah,
just
we
because
can
some of
do
this
that
is
one out.
here. This is one of your. What I see is that you're
So this would
camping
be
and
a-
emergency. Hold on a second. Your emergency preparedness things are stored in a good sized tub, but not too heavy. You know, so that
Yes.
you've got.
You can buy these plastic tubs at many different locations, and we have several of these, and we've got different things in each one. Ideally, we'd store these in a garage or something like that,
Right.
because if you're in a big earthquake and everything falls down, even if a garage falls down, it's fairly light, and you can
can get
imagine,
inside of
a
it.
multi-story house or
imagine
something.
getting in there and pulling these
Yes.
things
Right.
out.
Yes.
They're waterproof, so if it's pouring with rain, you can still keep your stuff dry.
Right.
And they're relatively rodent-proof as
I
well.
was going to say,
Yeah.
yeah.
So we don't have to worry
so
about rodents getting in and nesting.
Okay, I just wanted to let people know that
Okay.
because they'll see, you know, that we've got pictures of things that you've got in those same containers. So go ahead,
Right,
back what's in
right.
So
here.
this is one of those wind-up lamps. So that'll give you some light just by winding it up.
So it's a lantern. You can
Yes.
wind it up and it'll light the table or
That's
where
right.
you're cooking or whatever. Okay.
We've got a battery torch, a very standard battery torch. The batteries are rechargeable, and in fact, in another box, not in this one, we have some solar-powered battery chargers.
Solar powered.
Yeah.
Oh, nice. So that you've got it with enough sizes to match the various things that you
Right.
have, like your cell phones.
Not cell phones, no, that's true.
That's
but for AAA, AA, in this case D size
But we do
batteries.
we have another piece of kit that actually can be charged by a solar panel, and it's a generator of sorts. It'll actually consolidate the information, so you can charge it with the solar panel, and then it itself can run other kit.
I
So
see.
you can charge your cell phones and other things off of that.
You
So it
could run
doesn't
a-
directly charge the batteries, but it does provide electricity that'll charge.
Oh, good.
You could
charge
run a
it.
computer off it, actually.
Oh,
Right.
really?
Yeah.
Right.
So it's a solar powered little mini generator of AC power.
That's right.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
That's right.
So
This is a bigger lantern. This is a gas lantern, I think I mentioned. It's
right.
very standard. You can get these in camping stores. The gas cylinder isn't attached at the moment, but basically it just comes out and you put the gas cylinder on the bottom and it stands like that.
Right. It's quite
But
bright.
that gives you very good light.
yes,
Right.
those lanterns have been around a lot.
Yeah.
That start
Right.
long
Yeah.
time and very bright.
Right.
And a nice case so that it won't break. I like
And
that.
it's a fairly
That's
solid
smart.
case, so you've got good stuff there. We've got
Why don't we set that down?
Yeah.
this is just camping saucepans and things like that.
Saucepans, yeah.
So we can, these are all inside there, so we can cook. What else have we got?
I think that's pretty good.
Probably
right
nested within each other, so you have
Yeah.
different sizes in their lids
Yeah, and then
and
we've
so
got
on.
another
and
with
dishes.
dishes and knives and the washing up area. So basically, you can recreate. I mean, one of the guidelines is that, to all extents and purposes, that if it's at all possible, you stay in your house. If your house is safe, you stay in your house. But if your house isn't safe, then you need to find shelter elsewhere. And I think the experience that we're seeing now with some of these disasters, and certainly the magnitude of the earthquake that we're expecting here, leads you to believe that we in fact might be on our own, having to take care of ourselves for a significant period of time. And by that it could be weeks, if not longer. So the FEMA guidelines now are that you need to be prepared to manage for 3 weeks.
Okay.
Canada isn't quite to that extent, but they haven't had nearly as many natural disasters as the United States had in the last few years. So the guidelines are a little bit different, but certainly you need to be prepared to take care of yourself for that period of time.
So that would say, you know, obviously then your filter, that makes sense to be able to have water for that. Now, what do you do for what do you do for sanitation?
Okay.
I mean, the sewers may
in many cases, the city, to the extent that the city or the provincial authorities here can respond, they will try and provide chemical toilets or porta potty toilets. I mean, that's kind of the emergency response from the top down sort of an event. But there are other things that you can do as a citizen. I mean, we could do a composting toilet, sort of a management system where we actually contain the waste, and it could be in ground, or it could be in some kind of container managed in a safe fashion. And then that's a way to handle both the urine and the solid waste.
Right.
And that's a really critical thing, because you can imagine if the toilets aren't working because they get backed up because the sewage lines are broken, then very quickly it's going to become a health problem.
I was going to say, it's in the streets, it's in, you know, in the houses, whatever, which is
so
unsafe.
Digging latrines or coming up with some other way to contain the waste is going to be really important.
What do you have on hand in your gear? What do you carry?
One backup is we have compost bins here, and I mean right now they're being used for food waste, but they could easily be adapted to handle the container, and then obviously the city garbage system here. We have 3 bins. Many of us have 2.
Right.
2
so
or
you've
3
already
bins.
got some supply bins for having that kind of waste.
But I think if a disaster scenario continued for an extended period of time, you'd have to dig latrines.
Yeah.
Which isn't going to work for somebody who lives in a high-rise, but they're probably not going to be way up there in their high-rise if you've had an earthquake. You know, they're going to be down on the ground.
Yes.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, one of the things that we have is a little fold-up toilet seat. So that's particularly thinking of seniors who may not be able to squat, you know, a place to comfortably sit with plastic. And I know they come with like plastic bags that you can store the waste in and put them in your bigger containers.
Right.
And some people have portable chemical toilets as part of their camping kit.
That's right.
But those will become overwhelmed pretty quickly.
Yeah, you will need a place to set that up.
To think about that, and as a community, we'll need to think about that as to how we can handle it on that level.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
what do you do? What do you do relative to? Did we cover everything relative to shelter? I know we talked about tents, tarps for the rain. I mean, what do you do?
Yeah, it's always good to have a couple of tarps. You know, they can be useful for a whole variety of things, providing shade in the sun, providing shelter from the rain, a roof, meeting area, an eating area, all sorts of things. They can be strung up between trees or fence posts or all sorts of things.
So you've got to have the rope that goes with them, and probably some simple form of seating. I mean, again, I'm thinking older people are not going to be able to sit on the ground, or maybe too wet or cold or whatever.
Again, we have
folding chairs.
We have some folding camping chairs, which we use when we're camping anyway. Again, the camping kit can provide a lot of this kit.
Yeah, I was just really thinking about things as you can do fold-down tables as well, even if they're small, a place that you can cook and so on. What do you do in the area of warmth? You have both your shelter, your tent or whatever, or your tarps, right? But you also have got to make sure you have clothes that are ready for an emergency. What do you do in that department?
It's a good idea to have at least one set of warm clothes in one of your emergency bins, I would say.
And waterproofs, especially here in Vancouver, where it rains quite a lot.
Some rain gear, rain boots, whatever.
Right. And even in the shelter-in-place scenario, for example, you know, if the gas will be shut down most likely if it's a mega earthquake, and so it's pretty cold, these houses. So we actually have a kerosene heater, which won't heat the whole house, but it will allow us to heat the areas where we're living
Maybe
in.
heat one room.
So that we're comfortable in the middle of winter. So that's an option as well. I mean, we have fireplaces here, but the fireplaces tend to draw more cold air in than they actually heat the house.
That's true. If you have a wood stove, obviously. But of course, if it's an earthquake scenario, you may have breakages, you know, for the flu and so on.
You don't know if you're going to be able to go back into your house. So that's why the shelter thing is important in the first place.
You've got to plan as if you won't.
Yeah. We don't know if it's a big earthquake. We don't know if it might hit at night, in the day, when the kids are at school, when I'm at work, etc., etc. All sorts of different scenarios. It could be pouring with rain, it could be freezing cold, it could be nice and sunny. So you really have to sort of cope for different possibilities.
But even if we can stay in home, one of the things about masonry structures like chimneys, they're one of the most fragile pieces. I mean, wood houses are expected to do fairly well as long as they're bolted to their foundation. But the chimneys are the weak point because they, especially chimneys like these, I mean, they're likely to suffer significant damage. So even if the house was still able to be used, we probably wouldn't be able to use the chimney anyway.
So that's not,
we need to provide some sort of an alternative for heating.
So you've got space heating with the kerosene as well as clothing.
Right.
Hats. Boy, if I learned that in Canada in the winter. Hats. Right.
Yeah.
And given it rains a lot here in Vancouver, waterproof clothing is pretty important.
It's very essential for you.
Yeah.
What do you do for medical kinds of care or supplies? You know,
well, we have bought a number of items that are pretty standard in a fairly well equipped first aid. We have a number of first aid kits, but we also bought additional materials like gauze, like antiseptic creams. I've taken a first aid training course, basic level still. Tim's also had first aid training, so it's both the ability to use it as well as and then some of the books reference that we have how to deal with survival medicine situations. So
actually, that leads me to think some people may need to have prepared where they can and their medicines if they have prescription medicines, or an extra pair of glasses if you know, or
very important.
those kinds of things thought about. And I can see that the training would just be another piece of reassurance. You'd know what to do with somebody who's in shock or has a serious cut or a broken arm or something.
Or a crush wound.
That's...
I think when we look at the scale of some of these disasters we see on the television, whether it's a typhoon or a storm or indeed an earthquake, the emergency services get overwhelmed very, very quickly. So they will be focused on the truly big things happening, like a big building collapsing or something like that. And so most of us will be left on our own for a considerable period of time. So the ability to be able to at least do basic first aid on people will become very important, because there's just not enough ambulances or paramedics or even doctors to go around in a truly big disaster. So all those things become very important.
And knowing if any of your neighbors have skills. I mean, we actually are lucky enough that just down the block there's a nurse, a registered nurse, and there are 2 lifeguards who both have extended first aid training. So that's always a nice resource to have in mind.
Actually, I want to get back to the neighbors in just in a second, but I really want, there was another piece. I think we covered the main, main topics. But one of the things that you had mentioned was
we didn't actually talk about food.
We didn't talk about food. Okay,
we didn't talk about food.
What do you do about food?
Well, food's actually really interesting. I mean, the recommendation is that you have anywhere from 3 to 6 months. I mean, if you go with the Latter-day Saints, the Mormons, they typically hold a year. And traditionally, food,
prepared food, I mean, packaged foods.
Not necessarily packaged food, but foods that the family eat in their stores, in their house, so they know that they'll actually go through them, and then they have rotation periods and things like that. But as a custom, we'd always kept food in store. against a rainy day when we weren't able to buy it or it wasn't available.
You mean our ancestors,
exactly.
our foremothers,
that far,
well,
not
the next generation
back.
or two.
But certainly having at least, I mean, again, Canada recommends 3 days. The FEMA recommends 3 weeks. You're better off if you can have more like a 2 or 3 month supply for your whole family.
And so, what kinds of foods do you just
well, we have
generally?
A mix. We have canned foods. We have I preserve a lot of foods, so we have preserved foods. We have dried foods. We have simple things like pasta, things that are easy to make up.
Right.
We have a little bit of the emergency rations, but frankly, we don't do a lot of that. There is an advantage if you're doing a grab and go. You can't really carry a lot of the bulkier foods, but you can't really live on it for very long either. So if you expect that you're going to be needing more than just a day or two to take care of yourself, you're going to need to think about longer term, what kinds of foods can I keep? And again, it's where do you keep them? Because
they don't want them crushed where you can't get to them if the earthquake caves in, whatever.
Right. Or the shelving, you don't want the shelving collapsing.
Of course.
And breaking the bottles and things like that. So
right. Yeah, I can see you'd really want to protect the glass jars if you were canning in jars.
Right. And you want the oils, and there are a lot of things that you need to. I mean, there are lists again of the classic foods that people use to store for longer term.
And I remember the advice is store what your family will eat.
Right, and eat what you store.
And eat what you store and
so
keep cycling it.
Right,
Yeah,
so
right. So it stays.
Yes.
Yes. We're working on that. Thank you. That's right.
That's an important one.
The food, yes, we do want some of that.
Right.
For sure.
Right.